These thoughts are clickbait. The ones that are like, disaster, you abandon your channel for a full year and nobody knows who you are anymore and nobody cares even who you are and nobody's gonna sit and watch your video and your career is completely over and the other career that you're trying to explore has not even taken off yet. So really, what are you doing with your life? You know, that came out way too easily. I'm back. It's a warning. It's a threat.
Come say hi, Willoughby.
Yeah, yeah. Wow, I did not think that I'd be gone for this long. That was not the plan. I was going to initially take some time off of YouTube to focus on finishing my book, which I did. Applause, please. Thank you very much. If you're ever thinking about writing a novel, I would say don't do it unless you're very comfortable with losing your sanity, losing all your brain cells, coming to the verge of multiple mental breakdowns multiple times during the writing process. But I don't regret it because I'm really proud of what I've created, and I'm now in the process of trying to find an agent. So if you are a literary agent or if you know any literary agents and you are looking for sapphic thrillers, then I've got a really spicy one. It's been about 3 years since I started writing this book, and I've rewritten it 3 times actually in those 3 years. And every time I've been rewriting it, I feel like I've learned more and more about storytelling, about writing. I feel a lot more comfortable with my handling of the English language. And I also feel so accomplished for doing something that's, you know, extremely difficult and requires a shit ton of dedication and persistence and self-control, which I'm going to be talking about today. But I'm really proud of myself. For anyone asking, it's, like I said, a sapphic thriller. It's the story of a seamstress that inherits her mother's hoarder house during the 2008 financial crisis. And it's got a few sapphic romantic elements in it. It's a little spicy as well. It's very scary. I had a lot of fun coming up with this story and playing around with it. And I'm just like, I'm so excited for the day that all of you get to read it and go, what the fuck is wrong with Kristen? I knew there were a lot of things wrong with her, but now that I'm going through like 200, 300 pages of it, now I know. So now that I'm done with the writing, I still felt the need that I want to keep doing it and keep practicing it. So I started a Substack. I'm going to link it below. I've already posted a few things up there and I'm having fun with just writing a few essays. It's kind of like an extension of what this channel is, just like my musings on things. But I want to be posting more things like culture and wellness, a little bit of sustainable fashion maybe. The other thing that I'm considering is maybe posting erotica on Substack behind a paywall. I had so much fun writing those scenes for my book, and part of me really wants to keep doing that. And then I have this other part of me that's like, oh, that's so shameful. Like, don't do it. It's so embarrassing. But I'm like, who the hell cares? Like, if that's a way for me to continue practicing writing and having fun with it and enjoying it and also maybe like generating a little bit of income, like why would I stop myself from doing that if it brings me joy? And like, why would I care so much about what other people think if that's what feels good for me? So that's kind of what I'm thinking. And it would be like not classy. It would be anything but classy, but it would be aesthetic. You know what I mean? It would be aesthetic and intelligent erotica. I don't know. That's a little thought, throwing it out there to get your opinion on it. It's like you've been gone for a year and now you're talking about like writing smut on Substack. Kristen, what happened? Are you okay? Should we send help? And I'm better and I'm worse than I've ever been. So let's dive into it. Yeah, let's do that. Other than finishing a book and trying to look for an agent and starting a Substack and considering maybe writing erotica, I have experienced a lot of other changes in my life. I live in Florida now. believe it or not. If I knew more about Florida before I moved here, I don't think that I would have moved to Florida necessarily. Apologies to all the Floridians. It's beautiful. You can see it's lush and green all the time. And there's manatees and gators, which I love. There's a lot of wilderness in Florida, and it's incredible. I mean, I've done a DNA test. I'm pretty much like completely Mediterranean, and my people have lived by the sea, from the sea, and just have always been able to like see vast openness and water, large bodies of water. And the Mediterranean climate is pretty dry, so the trees are a lot shorter. And I just feel like a complete fish out of water. I feel like I'm in a habitat that my species of Mediterranean sapiens is just not built to survive. I feel just swallowed by the trees and swallowed by the sand. I don't see rocks or mountains or cliffs anywhere, and it terrifies me. I don't like this flatness, and I feel like there are people out there that have evolved in this environment, or not evolved necessarily because that's not how evolution works, but their ancestors have spent enough time in this environment where they have psychologically acclimatized to it, and I have not. And it's so lovely, so I feel like such a jerk complaining about it, but I truly feel just swallowed by all of these trees and this flatness. And I don't know if I'll be staying permanently in Florida. I'm here living with my partner at the moment, and that's another massive thing in my life that's changed. Like, I've been in a relationship for more than a year now. It's really an incredibly rewarding experience to date someone that's also such an incredible friend, and we talk for hours and just die laughing. And yeah, I'm very, very grateful to be in this relationship. At the same time, it's incredibly challenging because I have moved to a foreign country and I still feel like a foreigner here in the States. And I still haven't really made any close friends, and I haven't really put the effort in doing that. At the same time, being in this relationship, I feel like I've grown a lot in ways that I would never be able to grow outside of a relationship through just being single. And that growth has been torturous and unpleasant and not fun, and hopefully won't have to be repeated again. But yeah, it's been a little bit eye-opening for me to kind of really dive into who I am as a person and how I interact with other people, especially my partner in a relationship, and all the ways that I'm really failing myself. And when you start living with another person, especially when you're older, because when you're in your 20s, you're kind of like Play-Doh, you're very malleable, you're easily adjustable, but then you kind of get set in your ways. And I feel a little bit set in my ways, and my partner is definitely more set in their ways because they're older than me. And so when you start living with someone and merging your life with someone, you have to be able to adapt. You have to be able to self-reflect. You have to be able to be self-aware. You have to be able to compromise, but also learn how to stand up for yourself. The things that you learn about yourself are so different from what you learn when you're single or when you're in a relationship with someone where you're not living together and not planning a life together. So it's been very enlightening and quite exhausting having to face all of these things within myself that I'd never really developed and never really worked on. And doing all of that self-reflection while being in such a transitional part in my career where I really want to get more into writing and that becoming something that I do professionally is stressful. Also doing it while being in a new country that I've never lived in is even more stressful. And doing that while being in a place that is not my natural habitat is extra stressful. And I feel like for me, whenever I'm stressed out, I always lean on control to feel better. And that's what I've always done since I can remember. Control has been my coping mechanism. And control can be great, but also control can be pretty damaging. And I want to get a little more deeper into this topic today. For other people, it's the exact opposite. So some people, when they feel stressed out and worried and unsafe or anything like that, they're going to lean on losing control. So abusing substances or being in toxic relationships or abusing themselves. Everyone has a relationship to control, whether they want to get rid of it completely or whether they want to cling on to it. I think it obviously, for most people, it stems from our childhood, it stems from our parental figures, how we were raised, trauma. So many things can impact the relationship that you have with control. I think for me, when I was a teenager, certain things happened to my life where I felt extremely out of control, and it made me very depressed, and it was a very, very unpleasant time in my life, and what I wanted more than anything was to be able to get out of my parents' house and have complete control over my life, over my safety. While I was still living with my parents, I couldn't really control my environment. The only thing that I felt like I had control over was my body, and so I think that's sort of where my unhealthy relationship with my body stemmed from, and being hyper judgmental of how I look and being hyper controlling of what I ate. And I remember like I was, I don't want to say how much I weighed, but I was very thin and I have diary entries from that time just writing about how I wanted to lose more weight. And I'm like, you poor thing. So yeah, that's a little bit of trauma dumping. But I feel like after you grow up, it's your responsibility to fix whatever damage was done while you were in control. And what's really interesting is how my relationship with control has evolved. And I don't think it's ever going to be completely gone. And I don't want it to be gone. It's a little bit like a love-hate relationship where a little bit of control results in rewards, honestly. And a lot of control restricts you. So it's important to find a balance when it comes to it because there's no black and white. It's not about completely relinquishing control if you're a control freak. And if you're the opposite, it's not about like closing yourself in a box and just controlling everything. It's about finding a healthy balance. And even looking at this channel, it's interesting to observe how my relationship with control has evolved. So at first, this channel was about talking about sustainability and exposing multinational corporations that have been exploiting people and destroying the planet. It was a lot about let's understand the world and let's understand how we can control our behaviors so that we can make the world a better place. So it comes from so many controlling elements in there. The idea that you can single-handedly make the world a better place is delusional levels of control. It comes from a good place, obviously, where you want to save the planet, you want to make the world a better place, but at the end of the day, you can't. And I know that a lot of people are going to disagree with me here, but for me, relinquishing control over the planet and the environment and even people has been healing. All you have control over is your own life, and that's partially. So really having such an ambitious desire for control is not helpful. And it also contributes to an unstable psyche. Like every time something fucked up happens in the world, you're in the throes of depression because you failed the world. It was your job to end poverty in, like, Bangladesh for garment workers. I think it's good to be informed. I think it's good to know what are we supporting financially and what are the consequences that all of these things are having on the environment, on people, on animals. And I think it's good to be educated on how the supply chain works when it comes to the garment industry and knowing how much exploitation is involved in there. It's good to know our food supply system. It's knowledge is good, and I'm not arguing with that. But I do have a very different stance now on when in regards to personal responsibility. I think if you want to boycott companies, that's great. I think if you want to cut out plastic, that's great. If you want to do things to make the world a better place, that is great. But also there has to be an understanding, I think, that us implementing any changes in our life will not necessarily make the world a better place, and it will not necessarily make anything better, but it's good to feel good, you know? And when you do good things, you feel good, and that's good enough. But yeah, for me, I personally let go of being hyper controlling over the ethics of my food and the ethics of my lifestyle. I try the best that I can, but at the same time, if that level of control gets to the point where it's impacting my life in a negative way, it's isolating me socially, it's preventing me from being able to do and have great experiences, then that level of control I know is unhealthy, and I stay away from it now. Back to my relationship with control and seeing how it's evolved through this channel, I think around 2020 is when my content changed to more video essays exploring politics and identity politics, a lot of woke content. A lot of it was, I think, me understanding the world and how it works socially, not just how things are made and things are produced and the consequences that those have on the environment, but it's more of like, how have we structured this society and what impact does that have on us personally? I made a lot of feminist content during that time where I was kind of exploring the impact that various things in our society have on women when it comes to how we perceive our bodies and the media that we're exposed to and how that shapes our thoughts. During that time, I was learning more about capitalism and learning more about the patriarchy and a lot of stuff like that, and understanding kind of how the world shapes how we behave and how we think about ourselves, how we perceive ourselves. That was an interesting time as well. It was more about in relation to control, that's more of like, how is the world around me trying to control me? And sort of a little bit blaming the world for for everything. So, for me personally, that era is also kind of over. And I feel now for this past year, I've been in an era of self-reflection and looking at how am I responsible for me? Not how am I responsible for the environment, for people, for animals, for fixing the entire world. Not how the world is responsible for everything that they've done to me, but how am I responsible for who I am and how can I make myself not only a better version, because I think I am a better version and I'm fine. and and there's nothing really wrong with me. But I also think like, how are all the ways that I'm holding myself back is the better way to frame it. And I feel like this is where this is a direction that this channel is going to be taking for who knows how long, until I'm over this phase as well. And my third eye opens and I start transcending to the heavens, because what's the step after that? Please tell me. But right now I'm in a place where I'm trying to grow as a person. I'm trying to take accountability for myself, for my actions, and just kind of be not just be a grown adult, but be a grown adult that I am proud of. If you're wondering if you are also a control freak, I've compounded a little list of signs of a control freak. This is a recipe on how to make a control freak. Ingredient number one is perfectionism. Very much guilty of it, and that's part of the reason why I haven't been on YouTube for so long. I felt like I had to have the perfect script written down and the perfect lighting and the perfect outfit, and my skin had to be perfect that day and my hair had to look perfect that day. And that went on for the last 2 months. And this is why I have not made this video. And I had to just relinquish control because I know what social media is like these days. People have the attention span of a goldfish. It's not even funny, it's extremely concerning. And I can jump through hoops. I can swallow fire. I can, you know, I can balance on a tightrope to entertain you people. But at the same time, I have to be me. And I have to also be kind to myself and understand that I cannot personally compete with what's happening on the internet right now. And I'm setting unrealistic expectations for myself. And I understand that not evolving with the trends of the internet is not going to be great for this channel. I totally know it. And the lighting should be perfect, and there should be a script instead of me just chatting to you casually. And there should be graphics everywhere and emoticons and things, smacking in front of the screen and moving around and clips and videos playing nonstop. All of that should happen to grab your minuscule attention. And when I say you, I mean hopefully not you, but everyone on the internet at the moment. I could do all that and still it would not be enough. So I'm like, you know what? I give up on trying to be what the internet wants me to be, to satisfy algorithms and to satisfy people's short attention span. I'm gonna make the content that I want to make, which is lo-fi, casual, us sitting down, cozy, a candle, tea, and just chatting. That's what I wanna do. That feels good right now, and I'm not gonna overthink it. I'm just not. So yeah, for me, perfectionism really comes out in my work, and I'm trying not to. I think there's a difference between working hard and being a perfectionist. A perfectionist will sit and will waste time on details and things that don't really matter, and then a hard worker is going to invest their time in things that actually are going to benefit them. And it's hard to tell the difference, especially if your mind is so clouded by this perfectionism ideology, then it's going to be hard to be able to tell the difference. So good luck. That's all I have to say. And then part of this perfectionism is also being extremely judgmental towards yourself, and not only towards yourself, but towards others as well. I also have that. I've always had that. I'm really judgmental towards myself to the point where I will say so many nasty things about me on a daily basis. And I'm realizing now that that voice is actually not me. That voice is just somebody uh, that sounds like me and that is very cunty and extremely funny, but also their opinions have no value. I can listen to this really cunty voice in my head and laugh with the nasty things that they say about me, or even others sometimes, but I can't believe it and I can't take it seriously. And I can't confuse that voice with me also, because that is not me. I don't identify as a cunty person? Well, maybe I do a little bit, but not as much as that voice. I feel like I'm a kind, good person with good intentions. That's what I'm telling myself at least, and that's the story that I'm sticking to. If the cops ever ask any questions, that's what you're all gonna say. Oh yeah, and then also like judging others, which I hold people kind of to the same standard that I hold myself, which is an unrealistic standard. Hello. I'm Kristen, and I am voluntarily signing into control freak rehab. This is where I think this affliction is a lot more popular than people realize. I think everyone has controlling issues, and I see it so much with how hyper judgmental we have all become online. I feel like I've done so much of it on my channel, honestly. Like, I've judged so many content creators, rightfully so, might I add, but still, I should have kept those thoughts to myself. But at the same time, I feel like me as a content creator have participated in this culture of just hyper policing and hyper judgmentalism of other people and this hyper control that people online are trying to have over others. And I feel a little bit personally accountable for contributing to that type of mentality. So another sign of being a control freak is difficulty coping with uncertainty and change of plans. Hello? Kristen, and I'm checking in. It's a control freak rehab, but this has been something that, especially for the last few years of my life, I have been confronted with heavily. My life has changed so dramatically since 2001. I moved out of the apartment that I was renting in Athens, and then I just started traveling. And then I spent a few months in Portugal and then a few months back in Greece and then back to Portugal and then back to Greece. And traveled to a few other places during that time too. And then all of a sudden, last year in the summer, I'm like, I'm moving to America. Moved to America, moved to New York. Tried to make it in New York, was moving from a bunch of different sublets, from sublet to sublet to sublet, all over Brooklyn. And then found my partner. Oh, and like dated a bunch of people during that time too. Oh my God, I'm exhausted just thinking about it. And then I met my partner in New York and then moved to Florida, of all places. I don't even know how we've ended up here. I don't know. And then moving to Greece for the summer and then, you know, r- trying to become a writer. Oh, and I also got bit by a spider. I had to take antibiotics for that, which messed up my gut. And then I got depression because my gut was messed up because of the antibiotics. And then I didn't want to live. And then I started taking vitamin D and everything's okay now. To be fair, I think anyone, not only a control freak, would really struggle with this level of change in their life. I'm really just trying to keep it all together. I am I am hoping and praying to soon get a little bit of stability in my life. No. Mm-mm. Put your face. Yeah. Are you a control freak, Willow? Is that why you bark at cars? You can't see her, but she's an angel. But I'm so used to life without a dog, and life with a dog is completely different. You have to kind of, oh my God, your whole life has to revolve around your dog and their bowel movements and like taking them out for a walk when they want to go out for a walk. And it just, I feel like this loss of control over my time. And it's so silly. It really comes from just this controlling place where I want my life the way that I've had it, and I don't want to go for a walk in the morning necessarily, and I don't want to be forced to have to do it. Actually, that's a pretty good theory that like cat people are the control freaks and dog people are a lot of other things. I'm kidding. And I'm also being hyper judgmental because I have control issues, okay? Don't be mad at me. I'm broken. So how does one deal with this difficulty coping with uncertainty and changing plans and stuff like that? Personally, I have not dealt with it. So I'm not on the other side. I will update you if it becomes easier for me. I think it definitely exposure therapy doesn't work. I mean, I don't know if it works or not, but my life was extremely stable through almost all of my 20s. And since 2001, it just like got more and more random and more unexpected. It hasn't been easy dealing with changes, and I still get stressed out. But the one thing that has changed is that I have a little bit more trust in me and in the universe in a way that, like, things will figure themselves out. I am just as safe living in my hometown, having a groundhog day of seeing the same people and having the same routine again and again and again, as I am being in a completely different place that life has taken me. And as unpleasant as it is to be stressed because you're tackling new problems and living in a completely new environment, it does ultimately make you a more resilient, stronger person. And I'm glad that at least I'm more resilient now and can adjust more easily. Sure, that's great. It's great. I do want a soft life though. I do want more predictability. The exposure therapy is great because it's taken me down a wild ride, and the last 3 years of my life have been insanity. It makes for great stories to tell. It makes for great life lessons. It makes for a very fun plot, or at least a very dramatic and interesting plot, because it wasn't fun the entire time. For me, I want more stability. I want a more predictable life, but I also know now that occasionally I want to break out of that. And I want to have my adventures and see how that changes my life. And maybe I go to square one, or maybe I have this solid and stable routine somewhere new. Another thing about control freaks is that they have difficulty delegating tasks and they do it all on their own. I have a lot of difficulty asking for help, and I wonder if this is the reason why. I'm the kind of person that just I do it all on my own, and I don't trust people with helping me with things. This is something that I'm working on, but I'm really still at just the baby steps of it. Because every time I end up trusting people and being like, you know what, I shouldn't control everything. I shouldn't cut my own hair. Let me go to someone else to do it. I trust someone with my hair, and then I regret it. And that's why I cut my own hair. But then I trusted my partner with cutting my hair, and they did an incredible job. So it's just about having and surrounding yourself with people that you trust and then delegating to them and practicing delegation. Control freaks will also spend a lot of energy preventing bad things from happening. This is like, I have a lot of voices in my head. And, you know, one of them might be speaking in Greek. The other one is singing a song that's stuck in my head. Another one is saying really cunty mean things. But another voice is just like trying to spot threats, not just like what could hurt me, but like what could go wrong. And with everything and everything, I know exactly how it could fail, how it could go wrong. I would be incredible for managing disaster management, or what is it? I'm sure there is a field somewhere where this skill could be very useful. I can see every flaw with everything, and because of this hyper judgmental nature and my brain being stressed out about things, bad things happening all the time and not wanting them to happen, I can't help myself and I can't stop myself from just going on and on and on how anything could go wrong. And it drains me of my energy and it's exhausting. And honestly, if I'm not working for a company where I'm doing this professionally, it really is useless. It really is. And again, this is a good reminder that like the thoughts that we have in our heads are not necessarily us. There's certain things that happen in our lives where these voices are implanted, and they're not like real voices that you can hear, but you hear them in here somehow. I can't really explain it. There's certain people out there that don't have an internal monologue, and I don't understand. I can't even come close to understanding what that's like because I have like 20 voices in there. But I think that if you're having and you're observing these thoughts, a good thing to know is that those thoughts are not you, and therefore you don't have to actually pay attention to them. Of course, it's hard because these thoughts are clickbait. The ones that are like, disaster, you put your plate over there on the corner of the table and now it fell over and everything is covered in tomato juice, you know? Like that, and that's just like small things. Other things are like, disaster, you abandon your channel for a full year and nobody knows who you are anymore and nobody cares even who you are and nobody's going to sit and watch your video and your career is completely over and the other career that you're trying to explore has not even taken off yet. So really, what are you doing with your life? You know, that came out way too easily. But this is the kind of stuff that it's really great in a survival scenario. And if you're trapped somewhere in the woods, it's good to have a voice in your head that's gonna tell you all the ways that things can go wrong so that you can prevent that from happening. And I think our brains don't really know necessarily that we're not living in the woods anymore and that we're safe. I don't know if this is necessarily something that is only a sign of a control freak. I think it's also a sign of anxiety, which control freaks also have. So that makes sense. And it's kind of like a vicious cycle with control freaks where it's like, what is coming first? Is it the anxiety that comes first and then you're worrying about how everything can go wrong? Or do you first start worrying about how everything can go wrong and then you have anxiety? I don't know. I don't have the answers for that. Call your therapist. I don't know if they even have the answers for that, honestly. Call God. Another sign of a control freak, I can't say it. Another sign of a control freak is trying to control their environment, especially when it comes to cleanliness. I luckily don't really have that where I'm not like OCD about cleanliness. I think I have a very average and normal relationship with cleanliness. But I know that people suffer with that. And my question to them is, do you want to come over and clean? Because I really don't. The truth is, for me, I do have control tied to my relationship with my environment. And it's not about keeping everything clean all the time, but it is about feeling like I'm in an environment where I am in control. And if I'm in an environment where I feel out of control, I immediately feel like I want to leave and be somewhere alone. And it has been difficult being in a relationship where I live with my partner now. And the moment I feel anxiety, all of a sudden I'm like looking at flights to go live somewhere else. And that's really not okay. And, you know, it's not easy at all to confront the worst parts of yourself and to understand that you're not perfect. And that hurts the perfectionism and that controlling side as well. And then, you know, trying to control your body is another thing, which the topic of control over your body and what you eat is such a nuanced topic that makes people triggered on both sides of the spectrum. And I'm not going to dive into it today, but I do want to make a video specifically about that because I feel like we live in a world that we are exposed to so many things that we shouldn't be eating at an unprecedented rate. And it's almost an unavoidable thing, the amount of things that we are sort of forced to eat now. And so I think that a person that has these controlling tendencies, Willow, you're causing such a ruckus. But anyone that has these controlling tendencies over food, if they're doing it in a mindful way and in an educated way, is probably really useful because you end up, she's being insane, but you end up kind of saving yourself from a lot of illnesses in the future. The video has to end. But yeah, those were a few signs of a control freak. There's a lot of other stuff which I personally really don't relate to, like checking your partner's phone when they're not watching, or having a lot of jealousy issues. And I feel like everyone kind of expresses their controlling behaviors with very different ways. And for some people, it can be self-destructive. For other people, it is harmful to others. I don't think I've personally striked the perfect balance when it comes to control and lack of control yet. I think it's probably going to be a lifelong exploration of finding where my comfortable spot is, and that's okay. The one thing that I feel like I have hit a pretty good sweet spot with is letting go of control over things that I really can't control. Really broad things like the environment, natural disasters, politics. There were hurricanes happening here in Florida not too long ago, and I didn't feel stressed. And it's not only because I've never experienced a hurricane, but also when it comes to the environment, I'm sort of like, if I die, I die. That's not something that I can do anything about. I'm either going to die miserable and stressed out, or I'm gonna peace out like this. Which one would I rather do? You know? When it comes to the environment, again, I can't control it. I don't have, I don't have those powers yet. Whenever I see news regarding the environment, they're always bad news, obviously. I'm like, "Oh, that sucks." Well, okay. What am I gonna do, you know? I really, and it's not coming from, like, apathy, because that's not how I feel. It's just relinquishing control. It's like, that sucks. It sucks that this is happening with the planet. It sucks that this is happening with the environment, but it's also not something that I can control. Why do I have to let it destroy me emotionally? I don't feel guilt about it either, because guilt would be the result of bad things happening because I did something bad or I didn't stop them from happening, and that's not the case. This is done. So am I. This was fun. I'm glad to be back, and this is the part where I probably should remind you to like and subscribe if you haven't. Also, let me know in the comments, are you a control freak and also a cat person? This is very important. This is important research that we're doing here. And what have you been up to for this past year? I've missed you all. It's been too long. It's been too long. I can't promise that I'll never do it again, but every time that I'll come back after a long break, I'll have a lot more to say, which is great. I love to chat, and I could sit here for another hour. I'm not gonna do that. So I will bid you adieu, and I'll see you soon. Excuse me.